Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to call the meeting to order for the School Board of Directors to have an update on District Oppenlander property appraisal. May or may not take action today. Ms. Douglas, will you please call roll?
Certainly. Chelsea King.
Here.
Kelly Sloop.
Here.
Christy Thompson.
Here.
Kirsten Wyatt.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Pat, how about if I hand it over to you and we'll get an update.
Thank you, Director King. Thank you, board members. I wanted to provide the board with an update regarding the potential sale of Oppenlander Field to the city of West Linn. The district has concerns about how specific conditions and actions regarding the appraisal of the Oppenlander property have been presented publicly. After the city staff indicated to the district that they did not have available funding or interest in purchasing Oppenlander property as a park in February of 2021, the district proceeded with a fair market value appraisal, which placed the appraised value at $6.5 million in April 2021. The district's position was that if the property would not be retained as a park, the property should be offered on the open market at its highest and best value to the district. The district began to receive offers for purchases from several far exceeding the appraisal. Once this became known, the city of West Linn returned to the district with an interest in purchasing the property as a park. The district, in response to the community and as a goodwill gesture to the city, halted the sale process and re-engaged. The city and the district used the April appraisal as a good faith agreement on what to draft into a letter of intent, a purchase and sale agreement, and a survey to the community leading up to a ballot measure for May of 2022. Following public feedback for Oppenlander to be retained as a park, the city asked the district for permission to use the language in the purchase and sales agreement to designate the property under the city charter as a park. Once again, in good faith and trust in the city's intention, the district was agreeable to do so and authorized the attorneys to as such. At no time did city staff disclose to the district that they would accept, quote, park value, end quote, as a methodology for the appraisal based on this designation. The city continued to reference fair market value as terms for the appraisal and in conversations with the district. It is the belief of the district that to use any other methodology other than a fair market value of uses permitted currently under city code would be disingenuous at best and not what was outlined in the letter of intent, PSA, or what was talked about in any conversation with the city. In the last update I provided, I outlined the narrative that informed the city council and the community that the district had rejected the appraisal methodology performed by Romanagi Valuation Services, LLC, based on the methodology used under a, quote, hypothetical condition. The primary rationale for the use of the hypothetical condition methodology was based on the condition identified in the purchase and sales agreement, requiring the city to cause this land to be placed under city charter Chapter 11 designation. The appraisal assumes the value of the land cannot be based on fair market value under permitted uses by city code today. That simply is not true. The value of the property can change with the approval of the voters. Speculation that a change in use would never be approved by the voters is just that, it's speculation. The sale of Sunset Park property to the district demonstrates that voters can and will allow the sale of park property at fair market value. The City Council held a virtual meeting on February 7th, 2022 at 5 p.m. The potential purchase of the sale of Oppenlander was placed on the agenda. The discussion began with the city staff report and the city's legal counsel giving the council an overview of the process and legal options available. During the meeting, each counselor made statements regarding their preferred course of action. No consensus appeared to emerge from this meeting. Council then requested that city staff propose a meeting with an appointed counselor, city staff, their legal team, and with a designated board member, district staff, and our legal counsel. The board preferred that all conversations regarding the negotiated sale of Oppenlander at this time be held in public, be given the public's interest in the potential for misinformation when relayed between multiple members of either party. One concern specifically raised during the meeting was the designation of the property as a city park, quote, in perpetuity. While the term in perpetuity is never used in the PSA, it could be inferred by the members of the public that that designation of the property under city as a city park under city charter, chapter 11, could be permanent, which is not true. The city can sell the property under city charter through approval by the voters. Again, this is how the district purchased a portion of Sunset Park in 2011. During prior conversations with city staff, there have been suggestions that if the designation were removed as a condition, the city would be open to modifying the PSA to reach a refined agreement. Remember, the reference to the city charter in the PSA was the city's chosen solution to satisfy the district's condition and public's insistence that the property remain a park, a condition known to the city when they entered into the very first discussion about the purchase. As their legal counsel reminded city council in their February 7th meeting, the PSA can be modified by mutual consent. To demonstrate good faith, the board can offer to remove the designation of the property as a city park from the PSA. Without that perceived limitation, the hypothetical condition no longer exists, and the Romanage Valuation Services appraisal would need to be updated. That update can be satisfied by jointly agreeing to the appraisal completed in April 2021. Given that the deadlines for the decision to place this issue before the voters, there are two viable options that we are bringing before you in the form of two separate resolutions. Option A is to formally offer the city council to modify the PSA that removes the designation as a city park. If council agrees to open the PSA to this modification, the purchase price could be established by the RP Herman appraisal performed in April 2021 that places the appraised value of the property at $6.5 million. This amount has been used in all discussions between both parties and the community in conversations and public outreach. The district will rely on the West Linn community to determine the present and future use of the property. Option B would be to delay the placement of the sale of this bond proposal until November 2022. This option would allow the city and the district to continue to negotiate modifications of this agreement without the impending timeline of the May ballot. Both options are further examples of the district's good faith effort to pursue an agreement. Statements that the district operated in error or made mistakes are simply not true. The district continues to work diligently to reach an agreement that reflects the understanding of the parties, which is documented and further evidenced in public meetings and statements. Fail to reach a resolution on the matter makes it likely the parties will enter litigation. We anticipate that the city has a legal team prepared to litigate the PSA, and the district does as well. Both are highly confident they would, quote, win if this goes to court. But we also understand that the city, district, and community would lose if litigation results due to a failure by the parties to pursue a good faith solution. At this time, the options are still open to find an agreement that serves the community and is acceptable to both the city and the district. And that's the conclusion of my report, and I'm available to take any questions. We do also have district's legal counsel, James Walker, available.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McGough. And the legal counsel who's present, if it comes up, is he available to answer questions or simply to observe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
he's available to respond.
Okay. And I think one thing that's coming up for me when I'm going to open the floor before I jump into my questions, but I'm personally going to refrain from making assumptions about motivations. And that'll just be the spirit by which I pose some of my questions and comments. But with that, I'd like to open the floor to my fellow board members. If anybody wants to jump in. If not, I'm happy to go. I'm trying to read your faces and okay, can't tell. Nobody's going for their mute button or raising their hand. All right. I think it would be helpful for me just to kind of reflect back in layman's terms. I mean, I'm a board member, but I'm simply really a member of the public representing a parent in the district. And then I have just a couple of questions. So if I'm hearing you correctly, back when you began the timeline in early 2021, there was an initially indication that the city did not necessarily have the funds to purchase Oppenlander.
That's correct.
Therefore, the board made a decision to get an appraisal and sell it on the market, which is common. It's precedented.
Correct.
The appraisal came back as 6.5 million. And I assume at that time, when that appraisal came back, that information became public, that the city and the public and everybody knew that that was the appraisal.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I was on the board when we started to hear people say that they wanted to save Oppenlander. The district had allowed community organizations to use it for fields for some time. And so people wanted to keep it as fields. So they expressed a lot of interest to the district that we not sell it on the market. In which case we then said, okay, we'll enter into this agreement with the city of West Linn under, good faith. The number is out there. Everybody knows it. The city asked that it be protected as a park.
To be clear, we conditioned the city that if they were interested in making the purchase, that it would be a park, it would be for a park use.
Okay, I guess the intent of that on the behalf of the board was that was what the community was asking for. And so we were responding to community demand by selling the property, by delaying a sell really to provide it to go before the voters. Therefore, we're meeting public demand to keep it as fields or a park or whatever. All right, and so then I guess my question you answered one of them just by me kind of clearing that out. The last thing that you said was that we have these two resolutions in front of us with possible options that the board could take action on. And then you talked about possible litigation, that there seems to be escalation or movement toward that. And I agree wholeheartedly that would be a great way to make sure that both students and citizens of West Linn don't win, regardless of who wins in court. Is it possible, regardless of what the board does today, that if we reach a place where this continues to escalate and it is not, good faith is not happening, can both parties with mutual consent stop and withdraw from the deal and allow the district to just move forward as previously, prior to this whole situation began, would have?
Your question is more a legal question that I would defer to our legal counsel. I believe that I know the answer, but I'd prefer it to come from James if he's available. Maybe he does not have the ability to
I think,
tune in. So I will respond from what I have been told by essentially.
oh wait, I see his mute has gone away.
Oh, James, are you available?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Pat, and thanks to the board. I apologize for not being able to hop on electronically, but happy to answer questions. So Director King, thank you for the question. The short answer is yes. If the city and the district had a mutual desire to terminate the PSA, that's certainly within the parties' agreement or authority to do so. And there are a number of preconditions, obviously, to even effectuating the sale. So the short answer to your question is yes, the parties can step away.
Okay, so I just want to highlight that. I don't, when I look at these two resolutions, and I'm thankful for them because it gives me an idea of a next step in a situation that has just grown increasingly complicated. To be honest, speaking just for myself, they both rely on a fair amount of good faith going forward. So I have reservations about both of them. I'll stop there and see if any other board members have questions or comments. Yeah.
Thank you. So I actually listened to the city council meeting a couple times just so I could hear what was said and what public comments were made. So some of the questions that I'm going to have are kind of based off what I've heard, if that's okay, just to clarify some of the things were talked about in that meeting for myself. So one of them was there was a lot of talk about the contract and how it was written and being written in such a way with the appraisal. And I'm just wanting some clarification for myself. I heard kind of how they're interpreting the contract. I'm just wondering if I could hear from our lawyer about that contract and specifically talking about the verbiage when it has to do with the appraisal and the designation of the land. Does that make sense? That's
It does. And, the purchase and sale agreement was set up for a process where the purchase price would be determined based on an appraisal. Each party could select their own appraiser, and you could reach a purchase price with respect to two appraisals obtained from the city and the district respectively, or the district and the city could mutually agree to one appraiser that would conduct the appraisal of the property. That appraisal was to be performed based on the fair market value of the property. The appraiser is supposed to take into consideration factors for that property, like the park condition, because we had that park condition in the agreement as well. But the underlying approach, if you will, as far as developing the appraisal report, is to develop it based on an accumulation of factors and looking at that value, that fair market value. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess what I would ask you is, I feel like where we're running into conflict or disagreement is we believe fair market value and they're looking at it is designated for a park. They're interpreting it as got appraised for this, it got the appraisal that came because of what that it's designated as a park. And we're still going with that fair market value. That's what we're saying. So I'm just trying to understand why they have a different interpretation than we do legally, because that's not legal is not my wheelhouse. So maybe, I don't know if you can go into that a little bit more.
Sure. So there's a little bit of, there's legal involved, and then there's also the kind of industry approach from an appraisal standpoint. I'm not an appraiser, but I can comment on the legal side. So, in looking at the preparation of that appraisal, both parties, both sides had the understanding that the intent was to have some comfort around the property remaining a park, because that is the understanding of what the citizens would like to see for that 10 acres, approximately 10 acres. So there was certainly thought and expectation that the use of the property as parkland would be known, and that the appraiser would know that going into the process. But when they're determining how much to value the property at, there are a number of kind of different tools in the tool belt that can be used to set up a methodology to set that appraisal. And so the methodology is where the disconnect or the disagreement is between the parties. So on the district side, we're looking at a fair market value methodology. The appraisal report from Romanagi Valuation Services imposed what's called a hypothetical condition on the property, which is a factor that can be used to set up a methodology for setting a valuation. And that hypothetical condition appears to be, at least based on our review thus far, the essential or primary factor. The hypothetical condition being setting up the property as a park was the kind of dominant factor in setting the $120,000 value in that report.
Okay, thank you. And I have a few more questions, but I'll let Director Wyatt go ahead and ask, and then I can start.
Okay.
Thank you. So my question is, currently, before the word park was used, is the current zoning, is for residential development? Is that correct? Is it R10?
It is R10. I believe that there has been talk that it is zoned R7. I do believe that to be correct. It is currently zoned R10.
And I think what I keep thinking about is, so we have this one word that was included because we wanted to be receptive to the community and to what we're hearing. Because there was this assumption that, that it would be used for parkland and then used in this appraisal, that we're losing sight of the fact that, up to 70 homes could be built on this property. And it's just a reminder that, like, yes, when something becomes a park, the use is decreased, and that's, in my opinion, a good thing. But in this case, we have to also consider the fact that, that the alternative and how the land is currently used, where it stands right now. And so to me, it just seems like throwing that one word in there really takes a lot of power away from voters to determine, what do they want to see in their community. And Mr. McGuff, you had mentioned, that voters can decide if this is an investment they'd like to make. Voters can decide if this is something they want to preserve as a park. What I've observed about, especially the adjacent neighbors, is they care deeply about this property. And I feel like, making sure that the will of the voters is considered is an important part of this, rather than just making assumptions. So I think that's what I've really been trying to work through. My dogs, sorry, and I'll end it with that.
Okay, thanks. Director Sloop, just checking in. Should we go back to Vice Chair Thompson? Okay.
Quickly before I get to my other one, because I'm again not a land use, can you please tell me the difference between R10 and R7? And as I listened to the meeting last night, I felt like they kept using the term R7. That's how they were. So can you just let me know then what the difference is?
R7 is typical for most residential lots around virtually any city. My own house is zoned R7. It means, in simple terms, you can have one dwelling for 10,000 square feet of land. R7, you can have one for 7,000 square feet of land. In general terms, the lower the number, the smaller the lot per individual home. And I'm certainly no zoning expert, but there are different zoning classifications for multifamily homes or large lots. But R10 is a 10,000 foot designation per lot.
Thank you. So one other or a couple other questions I have, and I'll start with this one. I know we discussed this in our meeting last Friday morning. Chair King just spoke about some of the past land deals that we have done with the city. And one of those was having to do with the property around Sunset Primary. Could you remind me what, I know we talked about that land that we did a fair market value, but do we have specific numbers that you could share with me just so I can kind of have this comparison of my mind of what those numbers were? I know we just spoke of them generally being fair market value, but that's one curiosity I do have, what that looked like.
I can get pretty specific on the numbers that have been recorded. There was 1.6 acres of Sunset Park directly adjacent to Sunset Primary School that was sold to the district for $483,000. That equates approximately to $301,000 per acre. This was in the year 2011. And so at that time, that was fair market value, about $300,000 an acre. At the same time, the city purchased from the school district approximately 6.6 acres of property on Parker Road, directly adjacent to Tanner Creek Park. The city, that valuation was $2,007,000. That also works out to $301,000 an acre. While I don't know about whatever negotiating went on during that time, I can assume that there was an agreement, whatever we define as the cost per acre will be equally valued for both properties. It seems logical to draw that conclusion. But we have been able to research and find all those documents again before the deal was even drafted and signed by the city and the school district. The issue was placed on the ballot of the May 2010 election for the voters of the city of West Linn to approve, and they did. And it was once that ballot title was passed that the city and the district entered into the formal agreement and actually executed the land exchange.
And what did they use the 6.6 acres that they purchased on Parker Road for?
I would have to defer to the city. I only recall some of the uses that were being talked about at the time. Remember, we didn't have a new police station then. But really, I would have to defer to the city on what their intent for that property was. I don't know all of their uses they may have had in mind.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question I have, and this is just because I noticed it came up in some, I don't know if they were Facebook comments or some public comments that were made. I just think there might be some misinformation out there about land banking and the purpose of land banking and what rights the district has with land banking. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that, you know, the purpose of it and how it's, you know, supposed to be used so that the public has the correct information on that.
Certainly, I can go back historically and identify property that the district has purchased long before any use was determined for it. Going all the way back to Wilsonville High School, that property was purchased approximately 20 years before we built the school, along with Beckman Creek. Boone's Ferry Primary was purchased approximately 5 years before. The current middle school on New Athey Creek Middle School at Dollar Street, that property has been under district ownership for 30 years. What the district does is try and look with the long range planning committee, both city projections of growth, metro, and they try and predict where growth will happen and when. And the idea of the land bank is to purchase the property, number one, where it's certainly cheaper than it would be at the time you want to build a school. But as areas develop, larger parcels get harder to find in the right location. So the purpose is to try and anticipate where growth will be and buy parcels of land big enough to accommodate the school that may be planned there. Typically that's 10 acres for a primary school, 20 acres for a middle school, and 40 acres for a high school. And so that's been the purpose of the land bank. I will say that it is noteworthy that of the last 5 land purchases that the district has made that I'm aware of, we have been approached by the potential sellers. We were not actively looking for property in those areas, but once that offer came to us, we evaluated that they would be good purchases and we made them. And that is why having a funding balance in the land bank budget is so important. It allows the district to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves.
And is there anything that says that we aren't allowed to make money? Like, you know, we buy a land thinking that we are going to, you know, just in case, and then we determine that we're not going to use it for school. Is there some stipulation that says we can't make money?
I'm not a legal expert, but I don't believe there is. Perhaps that was a rhetorical question, but I would defer to James.
You're correct, Mr. McGuff, that there is not a prohibition on the district being able to realize the gain on the purchase and sale of land.
Okay,
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. I have one question that might be a nice segue, and then I think that will be my last question. So over the years, the district has strategically purchased and sold land, has created a line item in the budget for land banking funds that is utilized for this type of purpose. If a school district has not been doing that and doesn't have those funds available and they come into a situation where they need to make a purchase, does that money come from the general fund, or are they just not allowed to make a purchase, or how does the budget work?
The board would have options that, again, I would only tell you what I generally know. If there were money set aside in the operating budget, that is one avenue. You could put forward a ballot measure for a bond request and ask the voters to come up with, to approve a bond for the value of the property.
Yeah.
Uh,
So it sounds like if need be, a district would either use their operating budget, which is funds that are generally used to like hire teachers and buy curriculum, or they could go through this process of putting it before the voters, in which case they're also waiting for a period of time while market forces are acting on the property, much like
Correct.
what the district has been subjected to since we decided to suspend this at the 6.5 million. Meanwhile, the market has done its thing on this property. Okay.
Correct. There is also, and I want to be complete in response to your question, there is always the option to set up a private contract with the seller to receive payments over time with interest.
Yeah. Okay. So having the money there historically has allowed the district to be somewhat nimble when district has become available. Since I've been just some recent purchases that I've been on the board, we purchased, well, maybe I can just, are there any other questions, or should I just share kind of where I'm landing with my thinking? Okay. Oh, yes, Director Sloop.
So I have a question in regards to Resolution A, which is where we would take out the term park designation. So if we do that and present that to the city, and then they have the option of present it to the voters to see what they want to do with the land. And then the will of the voters is to not continue to say, to use that property for Oppenlander Field. Is there property or facilities that the district has available for baseball fields or soccer fields that can replace some of that loss?
We've been in conversation with youth groups in West Linn and the general areas, some with Wilsonville, about the availability of district property to offset those fields should they become something else. And the district has made all of our facilities available to youth groups. There likely is only a few select locations that could accommodate one or perhaps two of the fields that would be lost. That we have no facility that could compensate for 10 acres of property. But there are some, for instance, at Athey Creek that could be improved to meet the standard that they would like to see to have youth baseball, for instance. But there is not one single location that could accommodate all of them.
All right. Any further questions, Director Sloop? Okay. All right. Well, maybe if there's no further questions, I can kind of lay out a little bit of what I'm thinking and see if that drives us toward some version of a conclusion for this meeting. One thing I bring with me to every single board meeting that I go to is that my primary role is to make decisions on behalf of nearly 10,000 students. That's why I'm here. There are students who go to schools in West Linn, and there are students who go to school in Wilsonville. I make decisions for all of them. I also know that when we build schools, as you were articulating, there's fields and facilities. When we build schools, we build spaces for our communities. I know that also to be very true. I've served for several years on the Long Range Planning Committee as the liaison, the board liaison. And what I learned from being there is that we have a history in this district of making wise choices, buying and selling property. We've been strategic, and that's set us up for some pretty good success. We just recently bought a piece of land adjacent across the street from Westland High School to provide parking. We bought that at fair market value to provide parking, to respond to community interest, to increase parking there. We also bought land that's adjacent to the district office to respond to the growth that we're experiencing, the need to not park on Stafford, the need to be able to accommodate our increasing size of our staff when they gather. We bought that at fair market value. And, you know, I can't help but feel a little like we do need to be strategic and business oriented in our decisions, but also we are providing an education to our students, and we're doing it in a time of COVID-19. We're doing really complicated, demanding work. And we're adding this, which I think leads me to my next point of, I'm willing to pass one of these resolutions. My preference would be toward the first, Resolution A, and I can explain why. But I'm hesitant to extend good faith that will be executed the way we intend for it to be executed. So my hesitance is in dragging this out, complicating things, revisiting this time and time again while things turn toward litigation. So that's my hesitance. I would say, I personally, speaking on behalf of myself, would support getting out of this deal now, because I think it's demonstrated that this is not, based on what's been happening so far, it's not going to go well in the future. I can be optimistic and hopeful that I'm wrong there and that it could get better. I don't support option B because it drags it out too long. I don't know why I would trust that option. Option A, I feel like, is a little more solid in that it at least states a fair market value price and keeps us moving toward a resolution on this sooner rather than later. So that's all my cards. That's what I'm thinking. I'm happy to hear what other board members are thinking, see if there's a motion or if we're taking action, what that might be.
Chair King, I would be in agreement with you. I'm more interested in the first resolution as well. One thing that just came to my mind, and I apologize for asking this now, but I feel like too I'm just wondering, Dr. Ludwig, could you state, I think there's some confusion in our community as well about the job of the district and the job of cities, as far as we educate, cities build parks, but we also allow, I'm just wondering if you could speak to that just a little bit. Does that, is what I'm asking, make, you know, so people understand like what our purpose as a district is. I mean, what's our mission as a district as far as, you know, toward this community, education versus providing parks versus, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're in that articulation, and
well, I just want you to articulate it.
I think Chair King spoke to that as well, that while our primary mission, our charge by our community, by the Oregon Department of Education, is that public schools set up educational institutions, that we have schools that educate students. We could stay siloed in that technical definition, but the reality is also that schools become the hub of a community, that people gather at a school for an event, that the school facilities become available for community activities, that different organizations at times rent the facilities, whether they're churches or nonprofit organizations, and that there is this underlying belief that when schools thrive and these locations thrive, that the community thrives. And so I would also say that you could say that for the city, that the city also has a responsibility to care for community. And that's why we've been such good partners, is that we've worked hard to not silo our organizations, but to see where we can collaborate, where we serve the same constituents, we serve the same community. And as much as we can work together, that benefits the taxpayers, because the tax base is the same. And so we don't try and set things up to be us versus them. We've had a long history of being a we together. And I think you could point to the recent January Equity Summit, where the city staff, city community members, and the district all came together around a learning that would benefit everybody. And that's what sociology tells us as well, that a thriving community has thriving schools, but also a thriving network of city resources connecting also to school resources. So it's a mutual benefit when we can come together. And I think that's why, from the very beginning, these conversations had that strong assumption based within them, that these conversations had good faith and historical precedence of how this partnership worked and how we understood each other going into this agreement, that had value and merit and integrity to it. So I'll pause there.
Thank you.
All right, so I think our options before us are that we have two resolutions. We can certainly have a motion on one of them. If there's an alternative idea that somebody wants to propose, these two resolutions do not preclude that, but they're just helpful to us to know some pathways. I'm just looking at my fellow board members because I just need some form of feedback on if I should keep talking and decide the next action, or if someone's got something.
I'm happy to make a motion, Chair King,
Okay.
if you feel like we're ready for it.
I think so. I mean, we've been talking about it for 50 minutes. This is our second meeting in the past few days.
So I make a motion that we pass resolution number 2021-10, Oppenlander Field Purchase and Sale Agreement Amendment. And do you need more specifics? I'm looking down for, and it would be the board authorizing the agreement to be amended to remove the condition to make the Chapter 11 designation upon the property. Is that the specification that we need? Okay.
I second.
All right, Vice Chair Thompson made a motion and Director Sloop made the second. Is there any further discussion before we vote on this? All right, I am going to say that I will vote yes cautiously, in good faith, that what was intended to happen with a fair market value appraisal and the purchase price being $6,500,000 or another fair market appraisal. That's what I'm understanding is in this resolution, that's what I'm agreeing to in this resolution. I'll vote yes based on that.
Is there going to be another appraisal needed? Or is this going to be based on the 6.5 from April?
Yes, Pat.
The resolution clearly uses the April 2021 resolution as the purchase price number. There is no opportunity, there's no time left to get a second appraisal before ballot measure deadlines are upon the city.
So what this, and again, layman's terms here, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a city staff, I'm not a land broker person, I'm not a real estate agent. What I understand this to be saying is that the board is agreeing to allow the city to purchase this, to put it on the bond, the next, I think it'd be in May or whenever it would be, the next time that they need to do that to get it passed. We're removing the park language so they can do whatever they want with it. It's up to them and their City of West Linn residents. And that we're agreeing that the price would be what the appraisal was initially, we all were operating off of, which is the $6,500,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
And to be clear, if the board passes this resolution, it only presents the city the option to reopen our conversation and perhaps amend. It does not amend the PSA all by itself. We would need the city to agree to this and to modify the purchase and sales agreement.
And I would say just with that, I don't know what's going on in the city. I don't have communications with people, you know, who are on the city council or the city staff. I just talk with you all here. If the will for the city does not exist to move forward in good faith, then perhaps we need to consider mutually consenting to stop.
And Pat, I'm assuming they can, once, if this passes today, and then it's presented to the city, they can choose to reject it, correct?
That
And
is
then
correct.
and so if they do, where are we at?
I will report back to the superintendent and the board their response.
And does this need to be, again, the deadline, just to clarify, for all of this, in order to get it on the May ballot, would be Monday, February 14th is when it would have to be, they would have to agree to this by the 14th.
That's correct. They might have a day or two, but they are required to have newspaper notifications of bond ballot language. There are a lot of things that happen before the actual filing deadline that the city is required to perform. And so really the 14th is the deadline.
And I think we just, you know, it's up to them what they do. We don't know what they'll do. And so I appreciate us, all the preparation that has been going into a meeting like this, and holding it all in public, so that the details can be clear. And thank you to legal staff, Mr. Walker, for being present. Are my board members comfortable with calling the vote? Okay, great.
Chelsea King,
Aye.
Christy Thompson,
Aye.
Kelly Sloop,
Aye.
Kirsten Wyatt.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, fellow board members, for making time on such short notice again. And thank you, Dr. Ludwig, for your work, and Mr. McGuff. All right, we're done. Meeting's
Thank you
adjourned.
all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.